So, proofs for the existence of God are pretty straightforward and pretty simple, and you're either going to reject them outright or accept them immediately, and that typically has to do with the faith you have, whether you believe in God or not. But notice with the cosmological argument, it does depend on how much you're willing to extend the rules of logic, or whether you're happy sitting with. Uh, it just doesn't make sense to me how someone can look at the world and think it has no explanation. I don't get it. I go, some people are okay with that. Okay, that's the cosmological argument. What explains the world? There are a couple other arguments we're just going to touch on, and I put some better explanations than I can give in the videos, but I'll try to just get to the heart of what they're talking about. So we talked about the cosmological argument. We'll talk about what's called the ontological argument when we get to Descartes. That's something different, so we'll hold off on that. There's also the moral argument, the teleological argument, and the argument about what you could say is from mathematics. Anyway, in this video, I just want to talk just briefly about the moral argument. The moral argument is very simply something you're already probably familiar with because we did this with Nietzsche a little bit. The moral argument says, okay, without God, there is no reason, there's no morality, right? Without God, objective moral values and duties don't exist. But they do exist. Therefore, there must be a God. That's a modus tollens, I think. Without God, if no God, objective moral values and duties don't exist, negate the consequent, and you negate the antecedent as well. That is, if there's no God, then there is no morality. Nature is what is. There's no ought. We ought not to do anything. Why are we? And we've talked about this before with Nietzsche. Nietzsche's critique. Nietzsche says very simply, why believe in any morality? Why think that we should care about weak people? Right? If the world's just about power, there are strong and weak. Why care about weak? That's just 2,000 years of catechesis in Christianity. As a matter of fact, it's a relative ethic. A lot of ethics of the world didn't have the mercy ethic. Rome didn't have the mercy ethic, right? Ancient Greece doesn't have it. Ancient Greek thinkers don't have it. Plato and Aristotle don't talk about mercy or compassion as a virtue. They don't talk about social justice. Why do you believe in social justice? Why is social justice right? What is the explanation for that other than you feel so? Or 2,000 years of catechesis in Judeo-Christianity. So Nietzsche really comes in handy here when we talk about the moral argument for the existence of God. The argument says, look, you need an explanation for why morality is actually real, why it's actually good to practice social justice, and it's actually bad to victimize people and persecute people. That's the moral argument in a nutshell. There's a lot more you can say about that, but it's very simply, there is no reason to believe that things are actually, objectively, not subjectively, good and bad, or good and evil, without God, okay? Moreover, one of the most popular objections to the existence of God is what's called the problem of evil. Problem of evil says, well, why would a good God allow suffering? Why would a good God allow so much evil in the world? Now, interestingly enough, you'll see this in the one video by Peter Kraft, who was one of my professors at Boston College. He says, well, wait a minute, without God, there is no evil. So if you don't have God, you could, in other words, in order to criticize God, you have to use the very concept that presupposes him, namely good and evil. So in order to look at God and say, why does he allow this suffering? Why does he allow the coronavirus? Why does he allow innocent people to be victimized? Why would a good God be that evil? I can't believe in that. But that asserts a belief in evil, the very thing that assumes a God. In other words, you can't have good and evil without God, but you can't critique God for evil without kind of assuming him. So you can't say, according to the moral argument, and I think this is right, God doesn't exist because the world is so evil. Well, good and evil don't exist if there's no God. Which one are you going to take? It doesn't quite explain why God allows things to happen, why God allows evil to happen, but it does show that if you want to keep the concept of good and evil, you have to keep the idea of God.